Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live guest interview within Mindful Journey. Thank you so much for your continued participation and engagement. If you've been with us for a number of these conversations, of course, if this is your first time, again, welcome. We're so delighted that you chose to join us today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in in the chat function. We'll strive to get to them on the back end of the conversation. I'm so excited to bring you our guest today, Jeff Hoffman. Jeff certainly is somebody who has been quite credentialed and has many successes and accolades, if you will, out there in the marketplace. But what has been most impressive is I've just gotten the chance to chat with Jeff once in advance of today, is that he truly has adopted this ideology that if you Google his name, you'll see that he says that success is ultimately his success is someone else's miracle, that our success can be somebody else's miracle. And as Jeff and I were just talking in advance of starting this morning, he was sharing that he's been traveling in the Middle East and all over the world, helping entrepreneurs, but also through a nonprofit organization that he has, helping individuals just find hope and shelter, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm most excited about that from our conversation today, because I know Jeff is going to share with us some words of hope, of encouragement, of inspiration as we all strive to get just a little bit better. I did share his bio in advance, and it's certainly way too lengthy for us to go through the entirety of here today, but I do just want to highlight a few key things. Jeff perhaps is most notably known for his role in Priceline.com and Booking.com. He was one of the co-founders of that organization, spent just about 5 years or so within, to my recollection. He's been involved with a number of startups as a proven CEO, where he's served as leaders within both public and private entities. He has a unique background in that, and I want to read this because I don't want to get it wrong, but he is a Hollywood film producer, a producer of a Grammy Award-winning jazz album, and executive producer of an Emmy Award-winning television show, which is quite impressive, and would love to learn a little bit more about that. But with all that being said, again, Jeff, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for what you're doing in the world, and thanks for joining us for this conversation today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So I'd love to just start with an overview of your career. I know it's amassed a number of different things, but could you give us a brief overview of where you've been, what work were you doing, and what your focus is now?
Sure. So um, I actually grew up with a single mom who had 4 kids and 3 jobs. So hard work was always part of the formula. And, considering we had no money growing up, I was always out looking for work, knocking on doors, asking if I could clean your garage, mow your lawn, something to make money, but to just take the pressure off of ever having to ask my mom for anything, because she was already working as hard as she could. And she was very entrepreneurial. When I went away to college, I went away to get an engineering degree, and literally, Adam, on the first day of school, I got sent home, although I didn't have money to get home, because I wanted to go to Yale, and I worked hard enough to get in, but I could not afford Yale, even with the help I got, and they were sending me home because I couldn't pay the bill. So I actually funded my college education by running a little software company in the basement underneath the university where no one could find me. And when I left, I went and got an engineering job, software engineering, at a big engineering company, but honestly, only because that's where the good jobs were. And good job, good paycheck, stuff everyone tells you is important, which it is, except that I did not have a good life. I had a good job and a good paycheck, just not a good life. I did not enjoy my work at all. And I was just working for a paycheck. So I only did that a few years. And one day I just walked out and I said, this can't be it. Because if life is just about getting to the next paycheck, then I'm missing something. So I quit, and I've been doing startups ever since. My very first one when I was 20-something years old, and obviously at that moment broke and unemployed since I quit a good job, was the first product I had happen in line at a busy airport, missing a flight and losing my whole value of my ticket when I couldn't afford that, and going home and saying, there's got to be a better way. Because back then you had to check yourself in by talking, you had to check in with a human and say, here's my ID, I need my boarding pass. And so those kiosks that you go to the airport now and you check yourself in at a kiosk, that was my first product ever. And our company was successful in travel technology. We were able to build those and sell those to airlines and airports all over the world. Been doing startups ever since. I've been a part of 8 total, including some really bad ideas that failed miserably. At least we failed fast. I have to say that. But, and everybody, failure is part of it. And what you hope is that your successes are just bigger than your failures. So being part of Priceline.com, which people know, well, Booking.com and Priceline are the same company. Ubid.com, other companies that we built that turned into multi-billion-dollar companies, kind of cover your bad ideas. I took a break from tech after 5 tech companies and went into the entertainment media space, where I did a music company, which is where we won the Grammy. We did a TV company where we've won a couple Emmys. We made some movies along the way. And honestly, all that for me was to improve my marketing skills, right? There's no better marketing machine than Hollywood. In fact, I have to tell you, one of the times that really got me was we were talking for 2 weeks about a movie. We went Friday night when it opened. We stood in long lines to get into the movie. And 5 minutes into it, we all looked at each other and said, this movie's horrible. How did they get us to get this excited, to spend extra money, to stand outside in the line, because they're just good at marketing. So the time I spent in that field included my desire to improve my marketing skills by trying to figure out how Hollywood does it. I did do Ubid, came after that. I did one more tech company, and then I made a commitment to sort of repaying all the blessings I've received by being an entrepreneur. My choice to be an entrepreneur allowed me to have a life I never really dreamed of. And so my commitment was I would repay that debt by helping as many people as I can for the second half of my life achieve whatever their dream is, get wherever they're going, be able to do whatever is important to them in their life. So the nonprofits you mentioned, I'm not running any companies anymore. I retired. I was a CEO since I was 24. I finally retired from that and spent all my time on our nonprofits, which again are helping people help themselves, especially youth, but not only youth. We work with a lot of different communities with a lot of focus on underserved communities and just trying to teach people. Last thing I'll say, then I'm back to you, is that entrepreneurship is not a job, it's a mindset and a tool set. What I realized is I was able to design my own future and create the life I wanted because I learned the tool set of entrepreneurship, right? The skill set of it. So my commitment was, I just want to teach as many people as I can how to help themselves through that same mindset and skill set that I acquired of entrepreneurship. And so that's what I spend all my time on today, is teaching people that.
That's amazing, Jeff. There's certainly so much to unpack in that synopsis. And I, of course, learned even a few more things about you that I didn't know. One of the things I'd like to touch on of that intro you just provided of yourself is because I love that you had the courage to walk away from something that was unfulfilling for you. And I think in our world today, there are so many people who stay in relationships and environments and jobs, et cetera, where they're not happy and they're not satisfied because they say, well, this is all I know. So I'd love to know from you what you recall of your mindset in those moments that gave you the courage to say enough is enough. Because I'm betting there's somebody on here, or somebody might listen to this later, who's saying, well, yeah, I know that I don't want to stay here, but how do I get the inspiration to finally say enough is enough?
So that's a great question. And there's 2 parts to that. The first part, you're exactly right. What people say is, well, this is all I know. Or people will say to me, well, I'm an accountant. I'm a whatever. I'm a whatever you are. I'm an accountant. I'm an engineer. I'm a lawyer, whatever. The point is, you are not any of those things. And you own that thing is the only thing you know, because that's all you gave yourself a chance to know. You're not an accountant. You're a living, breathing, learning machine that applied your skills to get really good at accounting. So my question, when people said this to me, Adam, I said, I'm going to go start a music company. That was the first one. And they're like, dude, you're a software engineer. All you know is software. You can't do music. And I was like, what I am is a human that loves learning. And what I always get a kick out of is the same way you became really good at accounting. Why don't you think you could become really good at something else? You learned accounting. You weren't born with that. You studied it, you learned it, you practiced it, and you got good at it. So why don't you believe you could do that again? And so that's where people get stuck. They accept the label. Everybody said to
Mhm.
me, "You're a software engineer, right? You can't do music." And I was like, I wasn't born knowing how to write software. I studied it, I practiced it, I learned it, and I got better at it. And I said, why does the same thing not apply for me learning something new? So no one
Mm.
believed or supported when I said I'm going to go in the music industry. And you'll get kind of a kick out of this because that journey ended on the red carpet at the Grammys one day, and we won a
Mhm.
Grammy for an album, jazz album we produced. And I remember there's all the media, and they're like, somebody's saying to me, well, how does this feel? And I actually said, well, this is the dream of software engineers everywhere. And people are like, what? And I said, I'm talking to my younger self. Don't worry about it. But they're like, what are you talking about? It's because if that's what you accept, that it's all I know, it's because it's all you taught yourself. And if you
Mm.
don't realize the reason you know accounting is because you were good at learning, therefore you can learn another industry. But that is not the default thinking of most people. The other part
Mm.
that I liked that you brought up was that this is what I get from people a lot, right? They're like, everybody tells me, let's say that you had a dream of being in the music industry when you were young and it didn't work out. And so now you are an accountant, let's just say, as an example, right?
Mhm.
So when I would say to people, what happened to your dream of being involved in the music industry? And people would say, Jeff, come on, man, at some point you got to grow up. And Adam, I used to say to people, really, because are you growing up or giving up? Because you are
Mm.
accepting the following. You are accepting that being a grown up means that you have to do, because I studied accounting, I have to run my accounting business. People tell me it's time to grow up, dude. You got to pay your bills. I got a mortgage, I got a family, I got responsibilities. You do,
Mm.
but for some reason, you're accepting that your job and the way you pay your bills and your passions are mutually exclusive. And so the
Mm.
whole beauty of entrepreneurship is, instead of me sitting in that cubicle that I hated in that big engineering company, um, why don't you find a way to turn the things you're passionate about into a job? And let me sort of summarize it. So that's what I did in music. I was like, I
Yeah.
can't sing, I can't play an instrument, but I'm really good at marketing and I know how to put proposals and packages together. So what if I started a tour and concert company where I put the
Mhm.
proposals, packaging, and financing together, then I go out and market the tour. I'm not actually going to sing and perform on tour, but I can
Mhm.
be in the music industry by turning my passion into a business so I can still pay my bills. So
Mm.
one day I wrote something down on the wall later when it worked, even though everybody told me I was an idiot for trying. And I wrote down this. I wrote down that your business should be the vehicle that takes you to the life you want to live, not the obstacle that's preventing you from living it. So people,
Mm.
when I would say, I always thought you had a passion for music, they're like, yeah, but I'm an accountant now and I got to pay the bills. Instead of saying, I wonder if I could turn the thing I'm passionate about into a business and make a living doing what I love doing. So that's
Yes.
your business should be your vehicle. It shouldn't be your obstacle. And if you are literally saying to yourself, someone listening to us right now, well, I'd love
Mhm.
to do that, but I got this company or this job, you're not giving yourself a chance. I've actually given this talk. I chose accounting because I had a guy. Just one last story
Yeah,
about
sure,
this.
sure.
I was giving this exact we were having this conversation, and there was a man that had it was, I think, year 23 of his accounting company, which did well. And he made
Yeah.
good money and he made a good living accounting. But when we would chat, his passion was never when I'd say, how's the business? Oh, it's great. Everything's going fine. We're still growing, making good money. That's about how he
Mhm.
talked about his career, which is most,
Mm.
huge percentage of your week.
Yes.
And then he would say, we'd chat, I'd say, how's your weekend? And he'd say, oh my God, so I found this recipe and I cooked this meal and everybody came over and people are still talking about it and they're telling me I should be, opening my own restaurant. I was like, imagine if you talked about the whole rest of your life, your job, the way you talk about that. And his other little thing, if he wasn't talking about cooking, was he was on a road trip in his car. He's like, I
Mhm.
discovered this cool little town just out randomly driving with no plan. And so one day I asked him, in a perfect world, if you had no adult grown up responsibilities,
Yeah.
all those excuses, what would you be doing? And he said, I'd be cooking for people and traveling and seeing the country, not the world. His thing is road trips.
Yeah.
And so when I gave this talk where he's like, well, I can't do that, I'm an accountant. I was like, really? Why can't you learn that? So I just want to tell you the punchline. He came to me in tears after it. And I was apologizing. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to upset you. He said, no, these are tears of relief. He sold his accounting company. He bought a food truck, and he's somewhere out on Route 66. And he stays about 2 months in every little town. He cooks for people in his food truck, invents recipes, makes people happy with his food, and then eventually he goes on the road again. And I have never heard him happier. You own your destiny, and there is no reason you can't teach yourself something new and still pay your bills. So please don't accept the fact that being a grown-up and doing things you're passionate about are mutually exclusive. They're not. They don't have to be.
That's so powerful, Jeff. Love, love, love all the stories, and the fact that, that's something tangible. I'm happy you shared that last story, because that can resonate with all of us. And I think, sadly, so many times, to your point of the grown-up piece, we do use as an excuse. It's like we lose that imagination, that a curiosity that we had as
Yep.
kids when we were 5 years old. Even for kids who go through trying times, because it's not lost on me, and you've probably seen this in your travels, in impoverished countries, et cetera. There are kids who are dealing with tough things, but still at 5 years, when their brain's not fully developed, they're curious and imaginative as can be. Yet as you grow older and life tells you, if you try this and you fail, well, you stop trying after a while. And I love that you've kind of, reframed this idea in the corporate world that, hey, you don't have to suffer just because society has told you you need to work a 9 to 5. You can make your passion, the thing that you love to do, something that's profitable. And
Absolutely.
that's amazing.
You have to give yourself permission, which most people don't.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So if there's somebody listening right now who's, let's use the accountant example. They own an accounting firm, or they work for a accounting firm. They're a CPA and they're making good money, and et cetera, et cetera. But they're like, oh, Jeff, I've heard this before. I'm hearing you say it now, but I just don't know what that passion is. I don't have that thing.
Right.
I like painting. How can we get in tune with, because I'm a big believer in this, by the way, and I love it. I think our whys need to pull us. We need to have something bigger than us driving us. And I hear the excuse from people that I don't know what that why is, kind of like what I'm asking you. I don't know what that purpose is. How can we help people look introspectively to find that thing?
Okay, that is a great and important question. And it's not introspective, actually. It's quite the opposite. When people tell me, how do I find my passion? My answer is, you don't, it finds you. But guess where it does not find you? Sitting on the couch at home, sitting in your chair at the office all day. You find your passion by engaging more in the world. So what I tell people is, go do things literally that you have no idea why you're doing and you can't believe you're doing it. My point is, friends will come and they say, hey, I'll make up a dumb example. We're going to the Renaissance Festival this weekend, the Renaissance Fair. And I was like, y'all have fun with that. That's not my thing. But I don't do that. I say, okay, I would probably never go there, so sure, I'm going to go. And I expose myself to things that if you never get out of your accountant's sort of lane in your life, you're never going to stumble across. Passions find you because you stumble across them. You stumble across things because you are out in the world engaging. People tell me sometimes, I look at some of my social media and say, man, you're so lucky, the life you live. And I always tell them, I'm not lucky, I'm engaged. When I sit in my chair when it's time to get my work done, but you know what I do with the rest of my time? I find ways to be out in the world. The more places you go, the more things you do, and the more people you meet, the more likely you are to stumble across your passion and say, oh my gosh, I was literally born to do this. And I would never have known that sitting on the couch at home or sitting in the office. So I think, Adam, what people need to do is get more engaged and go places you have never gone before. See things you've never seen. I talk to strangers regularly, to some people's dismay, but meet people. you never meet. Just turn to somebody wherever you are and say, hey, how are you? Tell me a little bit. Tell me your story. Does everybody engage? No. But people do. For the most part, people love human contact.
Yes.
And they love talking about themselves and their story. And you start discovering lanes and channels and people and things that you're like, whoa, that's fascinating. Can I come with you next time? You have to be out in the world engaged. And you can do some of that online, but I honestly think people need to sometimes put out down the devices and go somewhere.
Absolutely.
Again, I'll say it one last time. The more places you go and the more people you meet, the more likely you are to walk into a situation where you're like, I didn't even know this was a thing. I want to do this now.
Yes.
Your passion will find you, but only if you're out in the world engaging.
Yes. No, so true. Well, Jeff, let me ask you, and this might be somewhat personal to you as it relates to, because there might be something from your past that has been the trigger of your why, but I love that and I think it was one of your presentations I heard, and I believe it was one on a nonprofit site where it's like your success is somebody else's miracle. So I gather from you, without even deeply knowing you, that you're truly committed to serving people. But I'm betting that's coming from something in your past, because there's a lot of people out there who make, quote unquote, lots of money and success, but they end up or doing something detrimental with it or go down a negative
Yes,
rabbit hole. So I'm curious, what I'm trying to, get to here, I guess, is like the psychology of what drives people. Why someone like you in your shoes, were you able to take good and make more good, whereas some people have good and maybe make it bad? What is the differentiation between those two? Ultimately, I know I'm giving you a lot, but what I'm trying to get to the root of is, how can we help people become better people to do things like that you've been doing?
Sure. So I think that there's two parts of that, right? One of it is coming from, where I grew up was kind of the Arizona desert, sort of nowhere in the desert, and no one really wanted to go anywhere or do anything. And I had big dreams. I was going to go see the world. And if I would be stupid enough to tell people that, basically the answer was laughter. You're broke, your mom's broke, no one's going anywhere, no one's leaving this town, no one ever has. I would kind of get all negativity, right? And your big stupid dream of seeing the world's never going to happen, except who and what you are. That's what people around me were saying. And so now, my big dream was throughout the course of my life. I one day said, I want to look back one day and say I'm happy with the way my life turned out. One of the things on that list, if you sit down and ask yourself, no matter how old you are right now, when it's all over and you look back one day, we want you to say, man, that was a good ride. That's really the way I look at it. Man, I used my time on this earth well. What would you have to do? And if you're not asking yourself that question, it's never going to happen. I actually write those things down on my bathroom mirror on little white index cards. The things that I need to get done, so one day I'll say, I did use my time on this planet well. I did use my life well. And so one of mine was seeing the world. And you may have heard the story, but it came from 6th grade, a book report. The book I picked was Mark Twain. And in Mark Twain's book, this is part of where the why started. In the inside cover, Mark Twain had a quote that basically said, travel is the fatal enemy of prejudice. And I just knew in my heart, Adam, when I read that he was talking to me. I told my mom, I know that guy's dead, but he wrote something in my book. And I was like, I know this is meaning something to my life. And, I asked my mom to explain. And my mom's like, hate comes from ignorance. Ignorance comes from lack of understanding. And lack of understanding comes from never really getting to know people that don't look like you. And I said, then I know what I want to do. I said, I want to travel the world and get to know all kinds of people of every different shape, size, and color. Right? So that I can evolve into the man I'd like to be someday. I don't want to have hate or ignorance or prejudice or any of those things. I want to be able to celebrate people for what they are, but I can't do it if I never leave my little town. I have to go see the world. So I wrote down this goal. I want to go visit 50 families in 50 countries before I die across my life. And by the way, I didn't tell people this, but you know what my secret goal was? I was going to have dinner in 50 homes with 50 families and 50 cultures around the world throughout my life. But when I told people that, I really got laughed at. Plan. I will literally, because that's the way to get to know people is I'm going to go to their home, spend the day, dine with them in their home with their family in 50 cultures in 50 countries. And so later, now you can cut to way later, I'm up to 102 countries that I've done that in.
Wow.
And people say to me, how did you get from your little place in the desert where everybody was just laughing at your idea to 102 countries later? It worked out. And so what I realized was that's what gave me a why, because I was able to get from where I was to where I wanted to be. And I realized that, like we said before, that was because of the skill set of entrepreneurship, but it didn't matter the what. The why was I was able to design and create the life that I wanted. And so I realized that whatever I learned that enabled me to do that, I needed to commit the rest of my life to sharing that with as many people as I can so they can get from if they're bad. And you're right, a lot of people are living. Right before you and I got online, I was on a video with a bunch of orphaned children, abandoned children in Uganda, and I was paying to get them all in school. Those kids can't help themselves, but I can help them. So now let me give you the second part of that answer that you said, where did the why come from? The why came at a point, in all honesty, that I was actually feeling bad about the fact that things were going well. I was launching more than businesses, and for the most part, our businesses were successful, and we were making a lot of money, way more money than I ever wanted or needed. And I'm not a money-driven person, but there was a point where I felt bad, because in my travels, including just across our own country, you see a lot of people living not very well and struggling, and I'm living nice. And I'm like, there's such an imbalance in the distribution of blessings in the world, and I'm feeling bad about it. And the story that really cemented my why was the night, and it's the thing I think you're referring to in one of my talks, that I was watching TV and there was a news story about a shelter for abused women. And the women were being sent to the streets because the shelter ran out of money, the home. And they were sending all the women back out on the streets because they had nowhere else to go. They couldn't go back to their abuser, and they had no money and no family. So they were literally going to be homeless on the streets, and some of them with kids. And at that moment, I remember saying what everybody says. Everybody listening has done this. You're watching something horrible, and you know what you say to yourself? Man, they should help those women. They should do something. They should help them. And that was the why moment in my life, Adam, because I stood there and I thought, wait a minute, if everybody in the world looking at a problem, anybody where you live, if you're in Detroit, you're driving through downtown and you're like, man, they should fix this. If everybody looking at a problem says they should do something, who's doing something? Nobody.
Wow.
We're all
Wow,
saying
that's
that.
deep.
So I literally wrote on the board on my wall that day. I stood up and I wrote my epiphany. I wrote, there is no they, it's you. It's me. There is no they. And that became my why. There's no they. No one is going to help those women, and no one is going to feed those children that I was just talking to before I spoke to you. That changed my life. And so where that other line came from was I realized that instead of feeling bad about being good at business and making money, that the more money I make, the more kids I feed, the more kids go to school. And that actually happened with those women. Because instead of saying they should help those women, I was like, wait a minute. I was just feeling bad about making money, and now I'm saying a prayer of thanks. You know why? Because I can help those women. There's no they, it's me. And so I did it anonymously because I didn't want the story to be about internet entrepreneur saves women. I went and paid for the house. And I did not want to be in the story. So I did it anonymously. So that night on the news, they were interviewing the woman. And she said, I did it. I literally brought cash in a big gym bag so that they couldn't get my name from any electronic transaction. And when I left, the woman was on the news again. And she said, quote, it was a miracle. Some man came and paid for the house, and now we have no bills and we're all safe again.
Wow.
And I was sitting there watching the news thinking anonymously, but thinking it wasn't a miracle at all. It's just hard work. I didn't do anything that was a miracle. I just worked really hard, take good care of my customers, have the best employees, and make a lot of money. That's not a miracle. That's focus, hard work, and doing the right thing. So I wrote on the board, the quote you were talking about, I wrote, "Your success is someone else's miracle." And that became my why. The harder we work, people ask me, why do I spend so much time mentoring business owners and entrepreneurs? I mentor the ones that I believe will use their success to create a ripple effect. I'm happy
Yes.
to help you if I believe that your success will become someone's miracle in your community where you live. And I think that's the ripple effect that we were kind of put on earth to create. That's what
That's
gave me a
amazing.
why.
That's so amazing, Jeff. I had heard that story. Again, I think it was from a group of financial execs that was available online, but appreciate you. I think it was even more powerful for me this time hearing it direct from you. It's admirable, and I know you're not, you didn't share it and you didn't do it then for a pat on the back, but I'm just, personally grateful that there's someone like you out in the world who's contributing to the greater good of humanity, because I do believe it creates a ripple effect. Just smiling, I'm a big believer of this. Like just smiling at the local barista. I go to Starbucks, admittedly, way too much. And when I go in, it's just the simple smile and calling somebody by their first name can
Yes.
go the longest way. And that's one of the things that we're striving to do in Mindful Journeys. I shared with you, this guest interview is just one of multiple features where we're trying to normalize and humanize life, because so often we put people up on pedestals and we think that we can never achieve what they've achieved, or we think that other people have not gone through what we've gone through.
Yep.
And that leads me to another question I want to ask you, and I've asked this of every guest, and it's to your level of comfort, of course, but that is, what's the most challenging thing you've gone through in your life, and what do you recall having done to get through it? And before letting you answer, I guess let me add just a little
Sure.
bit more context. The reason that's asked is because, you know, everyone's hearing your story now, or those listening later will hear that, wow, this guy's amassed a lot of success. Surely he doesn't have any challenges, right? So it's easy to say, well, he doesn't relate to me or can't relate to me, but I'm sure, and I don't know what it is, but I'm sure you face something difficult in your life, and would love to know what strategies you use to navigate it.
Sure. And let me back up one thing though that you said. I liked your barista story because that is the part that people miss, right? Is that human? Like you said, it's so easy to ask somebody what is your name and then address them by name, and it
Yes.
literally changes their whole day. But there's a step further. Now the barista, you're sitting in Starbucks, and you use your example, drinking your coffee, and the barista comes out to wipe the tables. For you to say, "Hey, John, tell me a little bit about you and your story." I found this from a friend that I kept telling him to start doing that. And it wound up that when he asked the person that does clean the tables at the Starbucks that he always goes to, and the guy told him what his goal was and why he was working at Starbucks and what he was saving money for, this young man from Starbucks now works for my friend's company. Because when he
Wow.
just turned and said, "Tell me your story. What are you all about?" And not everybody will answer, but most people will. And this young man started telling him what he's trying to do with his life. Well, it turns out that's what my friend's company does. And he's like, "Oh my God, I can give you an internship right now, then an apprenticeship." And now he's a full-time employee. If you don't
Mm.
talk to people, the worst case is you totally brighten their day by acknowledging them as a human. The best case is the one I just told you. You find out that there's a common interest there and something develops out of it instead of just "thank you for my order." So I'm really
Yes.
glad you brought that up because that's what you guys are trying to achieve. You are correct. That's the way to achieve it. So when people, you're right that a lot of times people look at someone else's life and they're like, "My life's hard, theirs isn't." The truth is everybody has hard. They just have a different hard. Your
Mm.
hard changes. Everybody has struggles in their life, difficulties. Nobody's life is perfect. And the definition of hard just changes, but everyone's dealing with something that's hard for them. It's just a different one now when you're a different
Mm-hmm.
phase of life. But way back when I didn't have a dime and didn't have anything that I have now. So you asked me to talk about challenges that were faced and how to overcome them. I will tell you what the first one is. The first is kind of a challenge of faith because when any idea that I had, right? I'm going to build a travel company. It turns out we pulled that off.
Yeah.
Priceline.com, booking.com, 190 countries that business today does business in. But whether it was that or the music company, whatever. whenever I said I wanted more, even by the way, all the way back to in high school, I went to a big public high school. I said to my guidance counselor, I want to go to Yale. And she laughed. I said, why is that funny? She
Mm,
said, people like us don't go to places like that. And I said, okay, but
mm,
I want to try. And she said, I don't think you should waste my time or yours. I said, what? You're a guidance counselor. She
mm,
said, yes, and I'm guiding you to not make unrealistic expectations. I
mm.
said, well, I want to try. She would not fill out the paperwork. My mom had to call the school and say, could you please fill out the paperwork for my son so we can at least try? So the big struggle has always been getting anybody else to believe in what you believe in. When you
Yes.
tell people, this is my dream, this is what I think I can do, it's a challenge. And it's a challenge for everybody, especially when you're stepping outside of your lane. I'm gonna go to Yale, and I came from this giant public place where school where a lot of people didn't even go to college; they just got jobs. Later, when I'm like, we're going to start a travel company, I'm going to travel around the world. Later, I'm going to start a music company. Whatever it was, getting anybody around me to believe, because you can't do it alone. You can't do
Right.
anything that's worth doing alone. You need a team. And so you asked what the challenge was. The challenge was finding support from anybody. Somebody, please believe in me and help me. I went through that multiple times, but I'll tell you, you asked how do you overcome that challenge, and you overcome that challenge. I'm sorry if you've heard this story as well,
No,
Adam.
no.
I'm going to tell you how I figured it out. Um, I'll go ahead and I always write these things down on this board that I have when I learn a lesson. So I'll tell you what I wrote this time. I wrote that we get our advice from proximity, not relevance. And that
Mm,
was how I wrote the learning. And the reason for that, Adam, is that everybody around you, the people that influence you most, have only one qualification for telling you that you're right or you're wrong, and that qualification is proximity. Your mom, your dad,
mm.
your husband, your wife, your brother, your sister, your friends, they have no qualification to judge my dream of starting a travel company. The only
Yes.
reason that I'm listening to them is because they're the ones there. Hey, I'm going to start a travel company. That's a stupid idea. You know what everybody kept saying to me? What's wrong with you, man? Just go get a job. Everybody
Yes.
in my proximity. So when you're listening to proximity, you're having a hard time. That was my challenge. No one thought my ideas were good. You're a dreamer, give up. You have stupid big dreams. Just go get a job like everyone else. That was proximity. Everybody told me that.
Mhm.
Relevance was scanning the horizon, finding somebody in the world, this is important, that you want to be like when you grow up, and then doing everything you can to create a mentor relationship with that person. That's not proximity, that's relevance. So I realized that my challenge was no one believed in my ideas, no one believed in me. You're not smart enough, you're not good enough. No one believed in my dreams. They would laugh, say, that's dumb. No one's going to pay you to fly around the world, right? Everything. Nobody supported me. And a lot of people listening right now, usually when I can see them face to face, I see people give me this look that, like, I had a guy last time, two people in a row said, yes, I'm having trouble with my spouse who wants me to quit chasing dreams and just go get a job and doesn't want me
Yes.
to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. So that's where relevance comes in. I looked around, and a mentor is not someone in your industry. A mentor is literally somebody you want to be like when you grow up. So I looked around, and there was this man named Roger,
Mhm.
and I had read all about and studied him, way, quote, out of my league. But I was like, I know that the people around me that are telling me how stupid my dreams are and how incapable I am love me, and they're saying what they believe, but I don't want to be them. I want to be like Roger. So I
Mm.
reached out to Roger, who was not in my proximity, but he was relevant. And it took me 3 months before he finally said, yeah, we can meet for coffee. Um, and the coffee meeting, by the way, he said, I have 20 minutes before I go to a meeting. He wound up canceling his other meetings, and we sat for 3 hours, and he was my mentor for years. So
Wow.
when I found relevance, and I would say, all right, Roger, here's my idea, because he had done the things I want to do and was the
Yes.
person I want to be. When Roger said, okay, Jeff, here's what's good, here's what's bad, here's how to go about it, that's the guy I listened to. And that's how
Mhm.
I overcame the challenge, because I stopped listening to all the people that were just around me, and I started listening only to the people that I wanted to be like, and they helped me believe in myself and get there. You need a tribe, but you need a relevant tribe.
That's very powerful. I love how you framed that, Jeff, and that resonates directly with me because I know I shared a little bit about mindful journey, but even before that, in 2013, when I first took the entrepreneurial route, going to the marketplace, doing motivational speaking, leadership training, everywhere I went, everybody looked at me saying I was crazy. Right? You're going to give up a
Yep.
job to go do something that, Adam, who's going to pay you to speak? You don't have this, you don't have all these accolades. You're a young man entering into the, business market. So all those things resonate directly to me. And I appreciate you sharing. Certainly, I am curious what you did, because I hear from a lot of leaders still today when I'm working with organizations on the leadership training front. Leaders will get vulnerable and they'll say a lot of times they fear taking risks, they fear doing new innovative things because they don't want to get exposed. They're dealing with imposter syndrome to some extent, and I've certainly struggled with that. I don't know if you have too,
Everybody
but
does.
yeah, so I'd be curious as to what you did to believe in yourself beyond Roger or your mentorship group, if you will, that allowed you to say, hey, you know what, this crazy idea that everyone else sees, I believe in me and I can bring this to fruition. Was there a book? Were there a journaling? Was there a series of books? What helped you believe in you when no one else believed in you?
Sure. So mine was, and by the way, it's funny you bring that up because literally last week I was in the Middle East, sitting down with a king of a Middle Eastern nation, and I was sitting there while all the protocol officers from the U.S. State Department, all these people were all the hubbub of meeting with royalty, and I looked around and I was like, wait a minute, am I supposed to be sitting here? I literally was looking and saying, what on earth am I doing here? I was thinking back, smiling at the little kid in the Arizona desert, right, with the big stupid ideas. And now I'm sitting here. And when the guy came in and said, I know that other nations listen to you, so I wanted to talk to you, I almost burst out laughing. I was like, seriously, why would anybody want to hear what I have to say? Everybody has those moments. You're like, what am I doing here? But that never goes away for anybody. But I will tell you my answer. It wasn't a book or anything. For me, it was actually an email. It was the first email where I got from somebody that said a complete stranger, which is why it's important, because if strangers will tell you the truth, right?
Yeah.
If you paint a painting and you show it to your mom, she's going to say, "Oh, honey, it's so good. You're so talented," because she's your mom, right?
Right.
You show it to your friends, they're going to be, "Oh, it's fine." And then when you leave the room, they're going to like you tell them, no, you tell them. But a complete stranger that doesn't know you, when someone says, pay $20 for this painting, they're going to say, I'm not going to pay $1 for that crap. They don't have an angle, right? So you need real feedback from people that have no interest, no angle, no reason to mislead or lie to you. That's what happened. I still remember the woman's first name was Wendy. I did something out in the world and I got an email from Wendy. She said, you don't know me and I never met you, but I need you to know that what you did changed my life.
Wow.
And a complete stranger validated. I believed that what I was doing at that time had value and could make a difference, but I was still doubting it and listening, giving a little bit of headspace to the haters and the naysayers and the doubters, until a complete stranger who has no reason to reach out to me and no reason to care whether I succeed or fail said, that was amazing and you changed my life. And then I got another one and then another one. So what got me believing was the beneficiary of whatever you're doing, when it's somebody that has no reason to reach out to you, tells you that you're good at what you're doing and what you're doing matters and it counts, and they're happy you're doing it because no one else was saying that. But literally, complete strangers who were, quote, paying customers. So that's you, right? You're going out and speaking. Everyone else is telling you, no one's going to pay you to speak. You're not good enough. You don't have the accolades, all the things you say. And then you get a review from someone that says, oh my gosh, the audience loved you. We're so glad you came. You did a great job. That erases everything, but it can't come from people on the inside. It has to come from the outside. That's what changed me. I started getting feedback. And I was like, you know what, friends, you can say what you want, but the people that I'm trying to serve are telling me they're happy with what I'm delivering, so I'm going to listen to them.
Yes. No, that's a great point. And sometimes, Jeff, we miss those outside reviews. I know with Mindful Journey, because this has been, it's been quite an an invigorating experience in that it's challenged me in ways that I've not been challenged ever, but it's also been a stressful encounter to some extent, because as I told you, we position this as an organizational wellness benefit. So inevitably there's an employee within a company that's like, I don't want that, I don't need this mindfulness, this woo woo. So it's been, I can miss all these positive reviews we get from employees within an employer group that says, thank you for the guest you interviewed, thank you for the coaching call, thank you for the challenging. And then you focus on the one person who unsubscribed and said, I don't want to be a part of that. And so it's what you're saying, again, I think it cannot be overstated, because what validated you and what allowed you to get away from imposter syndrome was the positive reviews. And I think we all need to do a better job of, finding the positive as opposed to dwelling on the negative, because there are going to still be negative reviews. I'm sure not everybody out there loves Jeff Hoffman, right? Not everyone. I'm sure you still encounter people who might be like, I don't know if I like that, etc. So if we dwell in that, it can hinder our progress.
You are absolutely right, and we're in a moment in time where it's worse because social media focuses on the negative.
Yes.
Right. The stories that go viral are negative stories. Rarely are they on the news and in social media. So we've been a little trained to focus way too hard on the one negative. I saw actually a funny posting the other day, made me laugh out loud. It was a picture of a sign in a restaurant, and it said, "Come on in and try the world's worst coffee according to one woman on TripAdvisor." It was hilarious. They took their one negative review and they blew it up giant, and they put it on the window, and that's what it says: "Come and enjoy the world's worst coffee." And then it said, according to this one woman on TripAdvisor.
That's amazing.
People were stopping in because of that sign, laughing and saying, "All right, let me try your coffee." It was a little coffee shop. And instead of responding to her, they turned it into a positive. But it's not only not dwelling on the negative, but it's seeking the positive. What I mean by that, just seeking the truth, is asking people straight up, asking people, how did I do? Please be honest. What could I have done better? What did you like? What did you not? When you passively wait for the negative review or for the positive reviews, it's kind of almost too late. It's really important to give yourself a feedback loop, whatever you're doing, to call people and say, I promise you, I just want to improve. So you're not going to hurt my feelings. Tell me what you really felt. Tell me what I could do better, what I could do wrong. And sometimes, there's a really good result where they say, actually, we didn't dislike anything. You did a great job. And sometimes they give you the feedback, say you did a great job, but you could probably work on this. And that's how you get away from the negative feedback, because you have a feedback loop of continuous improvement. What I'm saying is, don't be afraid to ask. A lot of times we wait passively for feedback. I don't. I go out and seek it. Tell me how I'm doing. I want truth. I don't want you to pat me on the back. I just want truth, because then I can actually one day earn the pat on the back if I listen to truth, because I will keep improving. So go out and seek truth and then respond to it. But you are correct. Be more focused on the positive. Sometimes people, the term edge cases?
No, I've not heard that.
Okay. So an edge case is the one person that, because of who or what they are, they were never going to like it anyway. So quit changing yourself to make them happy. I'll give you a really fast example. The first movie we ever made was a scary movie, a horror flick. First movie we ever produced. Back then it was Blockbuster. I drove to a Blockbuster store and to see, because it was Friday when our movie came out, to make sure it was all on the shelves, right? New releases. And it was. I walked in and it was on the shelves, and I was very, very happy, right? So our movie's out. It's on all the shelves of Blockbuster, our first scary movie. I'm walking out, and the kid that works there says, "Did you find what we're looking for?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "If you found what you're looking for, why do you have nothing in your hands?" Which makes sense, because if I found the video, and I said, "I just wanted to see if you had a certain horror movie." And he said, "What?" And I told him, and he laughed. I said, "Why is that funny?" He said, "Don't waste your time on that piece of crap." I said, "What?" He said, "It's horrible." He said, "Do not rent it." Well, he doesn't know I made the movie. And I said, "I hated every second of it." I said, "Okay, why'd you keep watching it?" He said, "The boss makes us as employees watch movies so we can give advice. I was forced to watch it. It was horrible. I hated every second of it." I get in the car and I'm depressed because I listened to all that negativity. And I'm like, I need to figure out how to make that guy happy. That's it. I'll tell you why he's an edge case. What did we do wrong that he hates our movie so much? So I'm really focused on that one negative review. So I
Hmm.
went in and I said, you really hated it, right? And he said, yes. And I said, well, I want to improve to make you happy. So tell me what horror movies you really liked. And he said, and I quote, none. I hate all horror movies. I hate all scary movies, and no one should ever make them again. And I burst out
Mm,
laughing. Do I need to make that guy happy? No, that's called an edge case. He's a person that doesn't matter to me. He's never going to consume my product and he's never going to be happy with it. So there's no reason at all for me to listen to him. But if I hadn't walked back in, I would have gone home trying to figure out how to correct my mistake. When in
wow,
fact, the
powerful
mistake was
story.
if you get a negative review from somebody that you then talk to and you're like, you know what, I could care less what that guy thinks,
Hmm.
then quit reacting to the wrong people. If it's your core platinum customer,
Yep.
right? If it's someone that says, I'm a horror movie buff, I love all horror movies, I've seen them all, and I didn't really like yours, that's not an edge case. That's the core. And I better
Mm.
find out what I did wrong. But if it's a person that says, I don't really need your opinion of Starbucks if you hate coffee and you never drink it. I
Right.
want I want the coffee connoisseur to tell me what to order. So anyway, I'm
Yes.
glad you brought that up because I almost responded to a guy that hates all scary movies and never watched it.
Well, that could have been the detriment to your to you ultimately going on to win your Emmy, or is the Emmy for the
Yes.
movies, right, or the Grammy? What I'm not. What is the Emmy is for the movies, right?
No, the Emmys TV.
Emmys. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's
So
later
then
when we did the Oscar is the movie one. Later when we
the
did
Oscar.
TV. But I was already better at listening to the right people. So that's why I
Okay.
gave you that coffee example. That one lady hated their coffee, no one else does. So they just printed her review on the window. Very clever.
Very clever. Yeah, what a great way to flip the negative and make it something
Yep.
that you can use for your marketing. Amazing. Well, I want to be sensitive to our time, and we'll be done in just about 8 minutes if that's okay
Okay.
for you. So maybe just two more
Absolutely.
questions. Another one I ask of every guest is, about trying to get in tune with your rituals, habits. I believe that success leaves clues. You kind of alluded to this before. Finding a mentor like Roger, who's kind of been there, done it, is not in proximity, but has some relevance. I'd love to learn from you, Jeff, as I'm sure our community could benefit from tremendously. What's a habit, a ritual, or routine that you've relied on that you can look to and say, well, that's really been helpful for
Sure.
me in my life?
Okay. My biggest one, hang on one sec. There's something buzzing. I need to turn it off. Okay. Off. Um, my biggest one, and I gave it a name, it's a habit. I call it info sponging. My biggest one is that I take 10 or 15 minutes every day. And for 10 or 15 minutes every day, and you do not work for your company, you do not work for your industry. I challenge myself to learn one new thing a day that I do not need to know every day.
Mm,
It's only 10 minutes. I read a news story about something that has nothing to do with my industry. If I'm in travel for a living, it's not a travel story, right? It's a story about someone, it might be watching a video, it might be reading a news story, it might be literally that 10-minute conversation with the barista, right? In a Starbucks, it might be a person. Spend 10 minutes learning something new about someone or something that you don't need to know, intentionally doing that. I do that every single day, and it helps me get a broader and deeper, at the same time, understanding of the world around me, which means
mm,
I'm more likely to come up with my next cool idea for a phenomenal entrepreneur for a startup. And I'm also more likely to, what we talked about earlier, to stumble across something I'm really passionate about, because I don't spend all day every day just doing accounting and then going home and thinking about accounting and then watching videos, YouTubes that are about accounting, right? And reading
mhm,
stories about accounting. Just once a day, try this info sponging. Once a day, go read something that you have no idea why you're reading, watch a video you would never watch, talk to a person you have no idea why you're talking to them, and
mhm.
acquire new knowledge every day just for 10 minutes a day. That's probably my biggest habit that's benefited me the most in terms of things I've learned, ideas I've stumbled upon, and people that I've met that I would never have if I was just doing accounting all day long.
Amazing. Great, great piece of wisdom. Going back to something you said on the front end of our conversation that I failed to ask you about right away, but it is something I I'd love for our listeners to be able to absorb is when you mentioned when you were, starting businesses that you had some failures along the way, which is inevitable, obviously. But when you endured those failures, when had one startup that wasn't making money, wasn't profitable, you had to close the doors for. What did you do in those moments, Jeff? What did you do to say, all right, well, I'm still smart enough and so forth, I can start something else and I'll be okay.
Yeah, so that one goes back, Adam, to tribe as well. Losing hurts, failing hurts. It's not fun. It's not okay. But you have to, the part of the DNA of entrepreneurs is you have to shake it off, get up, and get over it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't suck for a while. You cry, your feelings are hurt. Everybody makes fun of you. Oh, I thought you were so smart. Look at your stupid idea failed. Everybody's on your case. The simple bottom line is that failing sucks. However, it's survivable. The difference is you have to get up and shake it off. And the difference between entrepreneurs and everyone else is other people don't shake it off. They let the sting sit there in their memory. And so they don't want to try again because they remember what the hurt looks like. I don't remember what the hurt looks like. I remember what the win looks like. I don't sit there and dwell on that. I sit there and dwell on what it felt like when things went well. And I sit there and think about the alternative. If I never try again, I'm going to be back in the cubicle in that engineering job that I hated. So I always look at what's the real worst case. The worst case isn't that I failed. The worst case is that if I don't try again, I'm going to be back in that cubicle that I felt like dying in because I hated it. So I look at the worst case. I hate this sort of sentiment that goes around these days. It really came out of Silicon Valley about how like being proud of failure. People have failure parties out there and they make it sound like you have to fail first before you succeed. That's just stupid. Failure is not fun. Failure hurts. You should try your hardest. The difference is when you do fail, get over it and realize that. And so the last part is to answer your question is sometimes you don't feel like you can get over it. And that's why you need that relevance tribe. You call somebody and say, Adam, everybody's laughing at me. People are mad at me. I lost money from investors. I'm thinking maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just don't know what I'm doing. You're in that moment of serious doubt. You need that tribe of someone who's been there. Where Adam says, Jeff, when I failed, what did you do? And I said, I told you could get over it. I told you all the skill, I focused on the positive. I helped you get the new thing started. And you're like, right, that's what I'm going to do for you right now. You do need people that have been there, done that you can reach out to. Because today I'm down and I need Adam to carry me for a few steps. And next time it might be you, and I'm going to be there for you. But it has to be people who have gone through what you're going through. And they can say they've been there and they failed. So some of my business heroes, I didn't even know that they'd had ideas that they'd filed bankruptcy for. And when I got to become friends and say, man, you've never felt spirit, like, are you kidding me? My second company went so bad, I had to file for bankruptcy protection because creditors came after me. It was horrible. My credit cards were, I was like, what? You never told me that story. Well, no one goes out, and that's not the stories people want to hear, right? They mostly want to hear about the company that you built. But everybody has stories of surviving tough times and failure. And so when you find someone who's been there and done that, they're like, yeah, I know exactly how you feel. I've been there. You're going to survive it like I did. Find a tribe of people who have been there. And at the moments where you can't pick yourself up, because sometimes you can't, they will pick you up. If I didn't have that, who knows what would have happened.
Great piece of advice. Thank you. Last question for you, kind of in alignment with that. If there is someone listening today, whether in business or an entrepreneur or not, but they're struggling, they may be at their wits' end. I'd love to end on an inspiring note, Jeff. What's your message to someone today who feels like they're at their wits' end? They're maybe going through divorce, going through some bankruptcy, going through something, and they just don't feel like they wake up with the same enthusiasm they used to. What's your message to them?
So, there's a couple pieces of that. First of all, we all know that this too shall pass. Whatever you're in isn't going to last forever. It may if you change nothing, right? You can't keep doing the same thing every day and expecting a different result. But here's a cool thing. Every night while you go to sleep, lots of amazing, exciting things happen in the world. New technologies, new products, new geographies, new people right? New positions. Every morning when you wake up, the world is a whole new set of possibilities. There's new ideas, there's new technologies, there's new consumer trends, there's new people to meet. Every day is a reboot. No matter if everything in your entire life up to tonight didn't work out the way you wanted, tomorrow morning the whole world is yours again. And a good idea, the beauty of entrepreneurship, if we want to use that word, is that entrepreneurs are idea farmers, right? And the beauty of being in the idea business is a good idea does not care about your divorce. It does not care about how broke you were yesterday. It does not care about how depressed you were the day before. When you wake up, survey the world and say, what happened while I was sleeping that I can jump on? What changed? Because every day the world changes and presents new opportunities. When you jump on that and you have a good idea, people don't say to you, oh my gosh, your product's brilliant, but I don't want to use it because you were having a bad day the other day. Nobody would say, we're using Zoom. Nobody would say, hey, if the guy who created Zoom, I happen to know Eric in this case, but if the guy who created Zoom went through a really bad divorce, I don't think I want to use Zoom, said no one ever, right? What you say is, if your idea is good, no one cares about your yesterday. They want to talk to you about your now and your tomorrow. The world will always give you a clean start. Every day when you wake up, you get a clean start, but you have to light the fuse. But if you light the fuse by observing the world around you and being in it and saying, whoa, I got a new passion, a new idea, a new thing I want to bring to the world. If it's something, if there's an audience for it, all they want to do is help you in your future. They don't even want to talk about your past anyway. You're the one who keeps bringing it up. So every day, the world will give you a clean slate and a whole bunch of new things to work with. I wake up every day. Actually, sometimes I hate sleeping because a whole bunch of stuff is happening somewhere in the world and I'm missing it all. The first thing I do every morning when I wake up is try to figure out what happened while I was sleeping in the world that might create some cool new thing for me to be doing in the world. That's literally how I wake up and say, what happened last night? I need to know, because maybe there's some new thing that I could be jumping into that doesn't care about every day of your life up until yesterday. All that matters is today and tomorrow. So wake up excited about new possibilities because they're out there. You just got to go get them.
Yes. What a powerful, powerful way to close, Jeff. I'll pause on that piece. I am deeply humbled for your engagement today and for your just many lessons that you provided. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will, it doesn't look like the folks that we had on jumped off here. So I don't see any questions that are remaining.
No problem.
But I am so, wow, we're definitely taking a lot of this in. And I'll break this out into some clips and share on social media and so forth, and send you the recording. But I look forward to crossing paths someday in the future, I hope. And thank you so much again for your time and your wisdom shared.
Thank you very much for having me, and please keep me posted.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day. Safe travels tomorrow. Take care.
Bye-bye.